Hello guys, this is me Simo Orahara, and in this video we will talk about this special scene, Ichigo's transformation into the phase of salvation. Perhaps Kobo's use of the term salvation is an indication of Ichigo's salvation from his suffering in order to control his Shinigami and Holo powers, as well as the salvation of Inoue Orihime from the phobia she had towards this mask. How is that? This is what we'll discuss together in this video. First, let's talk a little bit about Ichigo and Inoue's relationship, because unfortunately the anime had a big role in distorting this relationship and making it empty of its content, especially at the beginning of the story. I don't know if the studio saw that the fans are attracted to Ichigo and Rukia's relationship, so it tried to delete what refers to the relationship of Inoue and Ichigo and focus on Ichigo and Rukia with their original scenes in the manga, as well as creating stories about them together in the filler episodes, such as the episodes of 342. Because whoever followed the anime, especially the beginning of the story in the anime, missed some pivotal information regarding Inoue and Ichigo. We all agree that Inoue revealed that she loves Ichigo in this chapter, but in fact Orihime expressed her love from the beginning of the story. If we go back to the appearance of Inoue in the anime, we will see that the anime does not indicate that Inoue has a real feelings for Ichigo, unlike what happened in the manga. Because in the manga there was something else entirely. In the manga, Inoue was sitting and daydreaming. Then Tatsuki came and sat next to her to tell her, "What are you thinking? Are you thinking of Ichigo?" And this indicates that Tatsuki knows that Orihime has feelings for Ichigo. Even more than that, Tatsuki was trying to make Inoue's relationship with Ichigo ended being together, and this scene did not appear in the manga, as well as the conversation that took place between Inoue and Tatsuki when the latter was visiting her at home. In the anime, Tatsuki and Inoue were only talking about food, but in the manga the main talk was about how Inoue missed a chance to be accompanied by Ichigo, because when Inoue was hit in the lake, Ichigo offered her to accompany her, but Inoue, out of shy, she refused. And this is the thing that she later regretted and was telling to Tatsuki, and the latter scolded her for missing this opportunity to be with Ichigo alone, and who knows, something might happen between them. The important thing is that these events were at the beginning of the story, and all indicate that Kobo was clear in how he saw things from the perspective of both Inoue and even her best friend Tatsuki. And on the other hand, and this is what is important about the topic of this video, is that Inoue Orihime was living alone. The only person who loved and took care of her was her brother Sora. Sora was everything for Inoue Orihime. He was her older brother, but he also played the role of educator and father for her. So we can say that in that period, the most beloved person to Inoue's heart was her brother. This brother, as everyone knows, turned into a holo and kept watching her all the time and seeing her getting close to Tatsuki and how she was telling him in her prayers about Ichigo all the time, and this made him feel a kind of pain and jealousy. Of course, Inoue Orihime did not know that her brother had become a holo and became a hateful looking monster. No, she didn't know any of these things. All she can imagine is a picture of her cute brother with kind features and a warm smile. And so we should really try to see things from Inoue's angle in order to understand this event well. Imagine with me that the dearest person to your heart, which you always see in a good picture, suddenly you see him this way. It will surely form feature of shock inside you. That's why this scene was expressing how shocked Inoue was. At first she didn't know that that monster was her brother, but after she learned that it was him, the matter turned from fear of a monster to fear someone she loves, and how he turned into a terrifying monster. So even after the end of that incident and her brother went to the Soul Society, that incident it didn't end with Inoue, but remained stuck in the depth of her mind. The person she loves one day turned into a monster and almost killed her. And this will start to happen with the second person who enters her heart. It's Ichigo Kurosaki. And in the past, Inoue joked about how Ichigo's sulky face made her laugh, and even she liked his frowning features. But those features, as the story unfolds, will begin to show Ichigo's Shinigami powers with the appearance of the mask. And the Soul Society are arc, Ichigo's hollow power was not yet visible, and Shirosaki's first appearance was against Byakuya. And there Ichigo's real suffering began. It was psychological and physical suffering. It can be said that it was more psychological than physical, because Ichigo believed that his hollow power was just extraneous and separate from his Shinigami powers. In addition, after the end of the Soul Society arc and the beginning of the Arankara arc, Ichigo's first test with that power will take place. In the first clash of Ichigo against Elikiura and Yami, we noticed how the effect of the hollow seemed to control Ichigo's fights. And also there were Inoue. She felt that the Ryatsu of Ichigo was no longer the same. As the Ryatsu became thick, Ichigo on the other hand got into a major psychological struggle during the beginning of the Arankara arc. His inability to fight comfortably made him fail to protect Shadow, Tatsuki and Inoue, and even Rukia when she first came after the Soul Society arc. Therefore, the reality of the psychological struggle that Ichigo was living with the power of the hollow was really a dilemma and needed salvation. The same thing was happening with Inoue Orihime. She saw herself as a worthless, especially when the presence of Rukia, who had a moral role in trying to restore Ichigo's energy as it was before. And Ichigo, as we know, could not get rid of his power of the hollow, but rather coexist with it and control it. And that's what happened to him after taking that train with the Visor, and there he headed to Wikomondo with the rest to save Inoue. And here we will enter into a new and important development in the story of the mask of Ichigo and Inoue Orihime. Ichigo had a second and last fight against Grimijo in the Wikomondo, and Inoue was a witness to that fight, and also for the first time she was going to see up close Ichigo with the mask. And Ichigo's appearance with the mask automatically made her feel terrified, and the memories of her brother Sora accident soon reappeared in front of her. She remembered his terrifying look, and now another person she loves looks terrifyingly. But even so, Inoue couldn't resist the fear that was possessing her, especially when Ichigo came back to protect her and appeared with that terrifying appearance. Fear again took control of Inoue, and stronger this time. Fear that Ichigo's fate will be like Sora's fate, to return another person she doesn't know. But Ichigo's defeat of Grimijo and his removal of the mask and his return to Inoue safe made her forget about those whispers, so that, as we see in this scene, she said, "He is my Ichigo again." Inoue thought that the case was over and that Ichigo is really able to win without turning into a monster she doesn't know. But that didn't happen. It is true that for a time, Elikiura formed that fearsome demon with darkness of the Ryatsu emanating from his body and the coldness of his aura, but that obscurantism was not worth anything against the obscurantism and the horror that formed on Inoue's features as she watched Ichigo's awakening in the hollow mode. This time, it is no longer limited to the mask only. Ichigo's body and soul became another person. No, not a person, rather a beast. A real beast, a monster more brutal than Elikiura by light years. Ichigo's roar shook last notches and also Inoue's heart. Is he really Ichigo? He's not. Ichigo wouldn't have defeated his enemy with such excessive aggressiveness, nor would Ichigo stab his best friend with his Zanpakuto. Ichigo wouldn't have killed Yuryu. Those events were all events like if they are a replay of the scenario of Sora's attack on Inoue at the beginning of the story. However, this time instead of Ichigo's being the savior, it was Elikiura. Ichigo's return to his natural form again, in his knowledge of what happened, it clearly showed him and everyone that what was inside of him could pose a danger to his enemy and even so his friends. And the next appearance of Horace Ichigo was at the Dangai event. There when the fake Tensa Zangetsu told him that this was the shape with which Elikiura fought. Shock features were visible on Ichigo because he knew that this scary form was the one Inoue Orihime had seen as well. After the events of the Arankara, Ichigo got rid of his powers after losing them, but things got worse after his friends were again exposed to danger, including Inoue Orihime, and he couldn't find a way to protect them until Rukia came again with the rest of the Shinigami to restore Ichigo's Shinigami powers. And even with the return of his powers, Ichigo avoided any use of his mask, as if he was trying to evade knowing his real problem with these powers. and he had to find a solution to this problem, otherwise Nemaya wouldn't fix his broken sword. There, knowing the truth about his father's past and his return to the royal palace, and knowing the truth of the old man and how he represents the power of the Quincy, and that the Hollow, who has always considered him extraneous power, in fact is his Shinigami powers and the power of his Zanpakuto. There was a happy ending for Ichigo in that door. He now knows himself and also what are his powers and what does each one of them represent. On the other hand, Inoue stayed with Kisuke and Shadow in Wikomondo before everyone joined Ichigo, and the events of the end made Inoue back with Ichigo to face Yhwach. Inoue going with Ichigo to face Yhwach was very symbolic, because she will be the only one of all which will see Ichigo's salvation phase next to Yhwach, of course. The Big Bang, the mighty Ryatsu, revealed the new form of Ichigo. His horn is the only distinguished one, and the blackness that covers half of his face. It was the manifestation, and there the memories returned to Inoue Orihime. Memories of his brother, Sora. Memories of Ichigo's mask against Grimijo. And most importantly, the memories of the monster that she saw in the fight of Elikiura. Is the monster back again, or he's still Ichigo? And this time the answer was from Ichigo himself. I'm still me. Inoue's locks that Kobo drew at the end of that page had a special theme. It was also a look of salvation. Salvation from that phobia that accompanied her throughout the story. Fear of that monster no longer exists, and Ichigo also gets rid of his suffering with his powers, and he controlled now his power without turning into a monster again. So guys, this was the story of Ichigo's mask and its influence on Inoue Orihime. I hope you like it, and tell me your opinion in the comments, and see you guys in my next video.